Good morning. I'm Joe Romeo, your board president and today's worship associate. Sorry. Whether the Unitarian Church of Evanston is your spiritual home or you are seeking comfort and connection in uncertain times, we are grateful you are with us. We are an inclusive and welcoming community seeking truth in love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us is worthy of love and that we are connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. Together, let us remember our kinship with one another, and may we hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. There are many links of connection in the description below the YouTube live stream, including the order of service, credits, ways to support our mission, and to be added to our email newsletter. A few announcements. After the service, we'll have a brief kinship time on Zoom, followed by a presentation on one-on-one conversations led by Reverend Scott Asang of our UU Advocacy Network of Illinois. The link is in the description and in the newsletter. At 1 p.m. today, you can join the family ministry team for ice skating at Robert Crown Community Center. You need to register before 11 a.m., and you can find that link in Friday's newsletter. At 2 p.m. on Zoom, the nonfiction book group meets to discuss The Upswing, How America Came Together a Century Ago and How We Can Do It Again, by Robert D. Putnam. The link to join is in the description. Please get your chalices ready and set a place for yourself as we gather together in celebration and practice of beloved community.
Good morning. The opening reading today is When We Pause to Remember by Reverend Alicia Forde, who serves as the director of the International Office of the Unitarian Universalist Association. When we pause to remember who we are, companions on this grand experiment called life, when we take a moment to shed the ways we have been carefully taught, to lead from fear, to punish the poor, to persecute those who don't look like we do, to deny rights to those who love, to believe we are separate, that some people are superior to others. When we take a moment to shed all of that and hear our stories, hear and see each other into existence, into community. When we take a moment to embrace, to practice a different way of being. When we answer the call of love, then we are living into the promise of building the world we dream about. It is beautiful to dream, to cast a vision, to stretch our minds into the future and imagine what may be if we were to build a new way of being, not someday, but beginning again today. Beginning again every day that we have breath, taking courage with these hands and hearts to make real the dream of a more equitable world, to journey together, seeking to be transformed even as we transform. Becoming explorers and learners in this world around us, humbled by what we do not yet know. Fulfilling the promise of healing a fragmented world, laboring not just in hope, but also in love. In this spirit we commit, in this spirit we gather, in this spirit we pray. Welcome to worship.
This is our land acknowledgement. The Unitarian Church of Evanston resides on the traditional homelands of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations. This land was recorded as being transferred from the local Potawatomi community to the U.S. government in 1829 and then was sold to white settlers. After decades of violent encroachment by the French, British, and then U.S. American settlers, the Potawatomi community had no choice but to sell before they were forcefully removed west of the Mississippi. The Chicagoland area is now home to one of the largest and most diverse urban Native communities in the U.S. Our faith calls us to name these realities with honor and respect as one small effort toward finding greater accountability, deeper relationship, and mutuality with contemporary indigenous communities for the land which we use as a sacred space for the animals and plants that have sustained and been sustained by this land, and for our ancestors and descendants who are and will become part of the earth. As we light our chalice, symbol of our living tradition, please join in saying these adapted words by African-American theologian, writer, and social activist Howard Thurman. Let thy light burn in me that I may, from this moment on, take effective steps within my own powers to live up to the light and courageously to pay for the kind of world I so deeply desire. Please join in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Before our hymn, let's take a moment to greet one another in the chat. If you haven't already introduced yourself, please do so. We're happy you are here.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock
Have you ever felt so strongly about something that it led you to action? Well, today's story is about a woman who did just that. Pearl Motzowitz's Last Stand by Arthur Levine. Pearl Moskowitz had seen a lot of change on Ginkgo Street. In fact, she could remember when it was a plain street called Smith, after the man who paid for the signs. But soon after the Bowarskis and Plotniks and Krakows started arriving from Russia, there was a big change. Bella Moskowitz, Pearl's mother, gave a petition to the mayor asking trees to be planted on the block, flowering trees. Who could argue with Bella? He renamed the street Ginkgo Street. So Pearl and her sisters grew tall and blossomed next to nature's own. One fall, the prettiest ginkgo tree of all was struck down by lightning, and the sisters rushed out crying to gather the orphaned leaves. But the other ginkgos thrived, and one summer day, Sister Velma got married under the green canopy of Stewie Feinberg's tree. Time passed, and the names on the mailboxes changed to old presidents like Washington, Lincoln, and Jefferson. When Pearl sat out in the shade of the trees with her neighbors, she began to serve mint tea and lemonade, Southern style. Her friends called her Pearl and Sugar. And Pearl only minded a little when the workers cleared away Minnie Hamilton's tree to make way for a bus stop. That made it easier for sisters to visit. So more time went by, and families named Peña, Orontes, and Diego moved in. They taught Pearl to dance to a Latin beat, and they let her take a swing at the piñata for little Roy Diego's birthday party. But one day, a new mayor made a proclamation. "No more slums," he said. "Out with the old and in with the new." Bulldozers knocked down old townhouses and took away many of the trees with them. Pearl watched from her window and wished her mother were still alive. Bella would have stopped them. But the time, the Chens, and the Keys became Pearl's neighbors. There was only one tree left, but it was a beauty, broad, strong, and deeply lined, not unlike Pearl herself. All the grandmas would gather under it to play cards and have picnics, matzo balls and steamed dumplings, challah and jalapenos. Then one day it happened. Pearl was sitting under the tree reading when a truck drove up. A tall, thin man with thin lips and a thin tie got out. "Sorry, folks, but you'll have to move," he said in a thin voice. "I have orders from the electric company to cut down this tree, new wiring, regulations." Then he started laying out his tools. Now, as I said, Pearl had seen a lot of change on Ginkgo Street, but she was not about to sit idly by while they cut down the last ginkgo. She stood up. "Excuse me," she said. "You look like a nice boy. Are you eating enough?" The man looked up. "Well, I did skip lunch." "How about a little nosh then?" "Girls," said Pearl. Out came the plates, trays, cream cheese, and lox, and before he knew it, the man had tuna and kashka and scrambled eggs, fruit, and Pearl's noodle pudding. So good and full of cinnamon, it could stop you in your tracks. Cold. The electrician was so stuffed he could barely move, let alone chop down a tree. But the next day he was back. "Okay, ladies, no snacks today. I mean business," said the man. Pearl smiled. "Such a handsome boy," she whispered loudly to Mrs. Char. and absolutely identical to my nephew Joseph. Pearl pulled out her wallet and opened it to the section for photos. The resemblance is remarkable. She's holding it up. The man couldn't help stop looking over Pearl's shoulder. "Oh, honey, sit, we've got lots of pictures." The ladies snapped open their wallets, and with each one a story. Let me tell you, no tree got chopped down that day. But would you believe this man came back for a third try the very next morning? "This time, no tricks," the man announced. Pearl looked up. No one else was around. "All right," said Pearl, "you leave me no choice." Very carefully, she removed the long chain from Ronnie's bike that was propped against the tree. With a bold but measured step, she walked over to the tree and wrapped the chain around its trunk and hers. Then she had Ronnie lock his lock. "Now go get your mother," Pearl told him. "It's time for canasta." The ladies came and set up under the tree. Ronnie played Pearl's hand for her. At lunchtime, they set up a buffet. Sue Lynn fed Pearl some sesame noodles. "Are you all right?" the neighbor has asked. "Fine," she said. "I'll be here as long as it takes." People started leaning out their windows and coming down to see what was up. They brought music, baseballs, roller skates. It was the biggest party Ginkgo Street had ever seen. Finally, just as the sun was setting, TV cameras showed up and reporters interviewed Pearl. "I just want some justice," she told them. Of course, by then the mayor had arrived in a long black limousine. "And it's justice you shall have," proclaimed the mayor. He called off the cutting down of the tree, and Pearl even made him promise to plant new ginkgos up and down the block. The neighbors cheered and set off fireworks long into the night. Pearl took the electrician and the mayor into her kitchen and gave them each a huge, warm slice of noodle pudding. "Go look," I think he renamed the street. The end.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Kathy. Each Sunday, we hold space for the joys and sorrows of those gathered in beloved community. We honor the struggles and the triumphs, the brokenness and wholeness that is woven into the human experience. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like spoken aloud, you can submit it through the Google form found on the homepage of our website, or you can email me. Or if you would like to, you can enter it into the live stream chat. These are the joys and sorrows that have been shared today. A joy from Dennis Wilson. Community Renewal Society hosted a really great Martin Luther King Day celebration on Monday, and he learned some history and how basketball rules relate to the reparations issue. Go CRS. Sue Yoakum shares continued concern for a loved one in Tennessee. And this was shared anonymously. Please pray that Joy Richards their cancer pain, physical, spiritual, and psychological diminishes. See any that have been added to our chat. So I think those are those that have been shared. We know that there are many joys and sorrows on our hearts, some that are too tender to be spoken aloud. This is the sacred space for our tender offerings, and it is part of the practice of beloved community. Together we expand our celebrations and we lessen the burden of our grief. And so I invite you to center yourself in your body, wherever you are. If you are able, set your feet on the ground or just feel your body as it rests upon whatever surface you are sitting or lying upon. And breathe in with me. And breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. We are one, united in the elements, in our connection to the earth, to the air, to the water, to the fire. With that oneness in mind, I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer. This is written by Dr. Monica Cummings, minister, educator, and counselor. Dear unknown, unknowable, yet known by many names, keep us mindful that we are all related, that one of us is ignored and treated with dis-ease, we all suffer. Today, let us, each of us, commit to welcome the stranger. Let us move beyond our comfort zones and connect with people labeled different and pushed to the edges of society. We can make a difference. We can transform lives. We can bring harmony and healing to the places and spaces where we live, work, and play. Let us keep our hearts and minds open and receptive to the still small voice that calls us to stand witness for those who cannot stand, to speak the truth for justice for those without a voice, and to lead the way on the journey toward wholeness for those without sight. In the spirit of love, compassion, and community, let it be done. Blessed be.
Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know the rendezvous. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion.
As we say in our covenant each Sunday, service is our law. UCE is called by our mission, values, and principles contribute to our community, to form accountable partnerships, and to express gratitude through giving. Today's offering will be shared with Community Renewal Society, informing and bringing people of faith and congregations together in partnership with communities, coalitions, interfaith organizations, and civic leaders to intentionally and decisively transform society toward greater social justice at the intersection of racism and poverty. You may text to give, mail in a check, or give from our website. If you write a check, please indicate in the memo if your check is for the shared offering, pledge, capital campaign, or some other giving. Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy. A reading. Today, When I Could Do Nothing, by Jane Hirschfield. Today, when I could do nothing, I saved an ant. It must have come in with the morning paper, still being delivered to those who shelter in place. A morning paper is still an essential service. I am not an essential service. I have coffee and books, time, a garden, silence enough to fill cisterns. It must have first walked the morning paper as if loosened ink, taking the shape of an ant, then across the laptop computer, warm, then onto the back of a cushion. Small black ant alone, crossing a navy cushion, moving steadily because that is what it could do. Set outside in the sun, it could not have found again its nest. What then did I save? It did not move as if it was frightened, even while walking my hand, which moved it through swiftness and air. Ant, alone, without companions, whose ant heart I could not fathom. How is your life? I wanted to ask. I lifted it, took it outside, this first day when I could do nothing, contribute nothing, beyond staying distant from my own kind. I did this.
Somewhere in the open, precious, fresh air. Times I wanna take off, fly, and sprout some wings and go. Sometimes I'd like to leave my life, not be no mother or be no wife. Sometimes I'd rather not be nowhere here above below. I know that I chose this way. I made my home on the road I'm walking on today. Sometimes I'd like to catch a train, I would hop that thing and just get away. Sometimes I fear it's all in vain, this running to and fro. Sometimes I'd like to dig a hole and disappear inside of my soul. Raise up my hands, give up control and let my worries go. I know that I chose this way. I've made my home on the road I'm walking on today. Yeah. Anybody here do everything right? Anybody here wanna make this life the best damn thing you ever did? When I'm not cleaning up my mess, I hold my hopes up to my breast and I give myself a little rest and just enjoy the flow. Sometimes I think it's not all bad and I make the best out of what I have. And when I'm at my very best, I'm learning as I go. I know that I chose this way. I make my home on the road I'm walking on today. Yeah. And I'm learning as I go.
Ants are very social. They live in colonies, highly organized. Everyone has a specific job. Most are female workers who build and repair the nest, look after the young, get food, and keep things clean. Some are soldiers who defend the nest. They have a queen. I don't understand how they get themselves organized, but every ant knows what to do, and sometimes a nest can last 100 years. 2 years ago, I set up 8 big sheets of newsprint on a couple walls in here. Each sheet had a type of activity written at the top: education, immigrant support, healthcare. I asked everyone to use stickies on which to write activities in which they are involved, beyond our UC work. Activities that we value and that support our UU values. After the service, some people stayed a bit to talk about what was important to them that they had written on the stickies. Teaching third grade, being a doctor, physician's assistant, helping people find a home, volunteering to listen to young, early readers, teaching young adults how to teach others to read. Each big sheet ended up with a lot of small colored stickies which matched the titles at the top. Before this activity, I figured that we all do things to support our values. Sometimes we think that what we do is not that significant, or it is too much fun to count, like watching a grandchild learn to climb stairs, staying close enough to make the catch if needed. Sometimes we only see the one small thing in front of us, the one little jab given to one child for their one little immune system. But after looking at all our colors together, all our personal activities, so many a small contribution, I got a picture of the whole congregation, working together and separately, not thinking at the time that what we do has a great meaning when we add them all together. Each little ant in the colony making the world a bit more whole today.
Hi, I'm Jane Banner, and I've been asked to tell you how I put my UU values into action. It probably should be easy. I'm involved in a lot of nationwide and statewide groups that work for such things as economic justice and for environmental action. But that's not the whole story. I'm involved in those groups because I enjoy the people I work with. We share ideas. We have maybe even the same sense of humor. I think where my values come into play is when the going gets rough, when you have to decide if you're going to continue on working on the issue that you've started working on. That's when belief in the worth and dignity of each individual, in belief in the democratic process, and faith in the interdependent web become important. Thank you.
My name is Jordan, and I live my UU values by helping people with mental illness find and maintain housing, and by using the inherent worth and dignity of every person and justice, equity, and compassion in human relations as the basis for doing so. I also engage my kiddo in conversations regarding a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Hi, I'm Christine Peters. I'm living out my UU values by having a wildlife and nature-friendly yard. Keep as many native plants. I have bird feeders and bird bath. And it's time to fill that feeder because the seventh principle says, respect the interdependent web of life, of which we all are a part.
UCE allows me to live my values of kindness, love, compassion, and organization by helping refugees, the homeless, and the hungry.
I live my UU values in the world by vaccinating children against COVID-19.
I live my UU values in the world by continuing to do what is needed of me. I help babies take their first breaths. I comfort families on their worst days. I train tomorrow's healthcare workers, and I help people understand how to safely show up for one another.
This is my poem, Life Goes On. Squiggle, squirm, something needs help, but life goes on underwater. Things break, things shake, but life goes on underwater. People come and go. No one seems to notice, only some. They stay in hiding. We sit and watch things we love disappear. And instead of doing anything, we wait. Wait for something else to happen. We know it's wrong, but we keep doing it. And then, someone speaks up. Why are we like this? A little boy says. We're not thinking about other animals, he says again. They don't listen. The boy sinks back down, and yet life goes on.
I live my UU values in the world by striving to provide care to patients as reflected in this quote by Louis Pasteur on a statue outside of Cook County Hospital. One doesn't ask of one who suffers, what is your country and what is your religion? One merely says, you suffer, this is enough for me, you belong to me, and I shall help you.
One way I live my UU values is by working on programs and initiatives to prevent pollution in the Great Lakes.
I live my UU values by using my design skills for good and leveraging my power to help whenever I can rather than harm.
Hi, I'm Jean Durkin, and I'm heading to work showing my UU values. This year at Deborah's Place, we helped 500 plus women end their experience of homelessness.
I live out my UU values by getting out the vote and by dancing to music that I love with people that I love.
Hi, my name is Mary Dudek. My UU values help me to stay centered, and that's very important in these difficult times. That then allows me to do my part in my part of the world to make things a little kinder and a little more just. I'm grateful to be able to hold on to those values. Thanks.
There are countless ways to live our values, and each of those ways is valuable. I'm grateful to those who recorded their reflections on the ways that they live their UU values out in the world, and I know that each of you is doing your part in your way. There are educators among us, healthcare providers, parents, and caregivers of young children struggling each day to provide care and to work through impossible circumstances. There are activists and organizers who, instead of taking retirement as a time to take it easy, are busier than ever finding ways to contribute to making the world whole and being their whole selves. There are those of us who focus on voting and legislative actions that amplify our progressive values in the political arena, protecting the environment, protecting democracy, protecting reproductive rights. And there are those who find ways of spending their money in socially conscious ways. Maybe you do many of these things some of the time, and maybe you do one of these things most of the time. And maybe you're just barely making it through the day, and that counts too. All of it counts, and all of it contributes to the whole of who we are and to the beloved community we are trying to build. It is often said that in Unitarian Universalism, it isn't our beliefs that unite us, though we may find commonality around lots of our beliefs and ideas. What unites us and binds us together is our shared commitment to living our values in covenant. Values is one of those words that can be hard to define or make tangible. What's also tricky about values is that we hold lots of them, and in any given moment, they may conflict. For example, you may value safety, hoping for you and your loved ones to be safe and well, while at the same time valuing freedom, curiosity, and courage when it comes to trying new things. You may value openness to new ideas and hospitality towards those who are different from you, while also valuing truth and clarity about the things that you understand as absolutes, which makes it really hard to be open to those with radically different ideas. It's hard to reconcile some values when they contradict one another. Living by our values is rarely simple or easy, and there is never only one way to do it. When asking members to think about how they live their values, I ask them to consider how their Unitarian Universalism shows up in their lives. How do your values show up in the work you do and what you study and learn? How do your UU values show up in the way you spend your free time or in the ways you volunteer? How do the UU values we share show up in the ways you spend or invest your money? How you interact with people, in the ways you raise your children? In the story Kathy read, Pearl Moskowitz, though I don't imagine she was a Unitarian Universalist, nonetheless lived her values in many ways. She lived her values dramatically at the end of the story by chaining herself to a tree that had significance to her and her neighborhood. It symbolized beauty and tradition and family and nature, all things she valued. She lived other values too before that dramatic final act. She lived her values of hospitality and community building by being a good neighbor, getting to know and spending time with people who were different from her. She lived her values by caring for others, being kind, while also standing up for what she believed was right. Within our congregation, I see us living our values in lots of ways too. We practice speaking with honesty and respect. We offer care to one another, and we hold one another's concerns with love. We help one another when we can. This community offers us the opportunity to practice living our values with others who we know share them. We offer one another a forgiving place to grow in our capacity to live our principles truthfully and compassionately. By practicing within our congregation, we provide each other with the strength and the courage to take on the more challenging work of living our values out in the world. When I started attending UCE 20 years ago, I was looking for a place where I might be able to volunteer and to model for my children a commitment to service. I'd done some volunteering here and there as a tutor, but I was looking for ways to grow my impact and to sustain my efforts. I wasn't sure that what I was doing was much good on my own. When I came here, I witnessed others engaged in feeding the hungry, engaged in social justice advocacy, in creating peace, and upholding environmental concerns. Right away, I sensed the passion, the commitment, and creativity with which people were working together to help make the world better, and I wanted in. I wanted to be among you. I wanted to be like you. In this community, we call one another to our better selves, and this is something I've seen grow and blossom in my time among you. That is not to say that every one of us is always kind at every moment. We aren't always our best selves. Sometimes we disagree. We don't always act respectfully when we do. Sometimes we hurt one another in our efforts to do the right thing, but again, this is our place to practice, to make mistakes, to call one another into accountable relationships, to forgive one another, and to try again. Here is that time in the service when I say yet again, I know we're all tired and weary. This is that time of the year that is gloomy and gray, like a coat of ice surrounding our hearts. We want to put our heads down and just take a nap until spring. And I want to say it over and over again, dear ones, be tender with yourselves. There is so much work to do. Our world is in desperate need of our Unitarian Universalist values, and so as 13th century poet and mystic Rumi says, don't go back to sleep, but also be gentle with yourselves. Try to recognize all the ways that you are doing your best to carry our shared values of truth, democracy, anti-racism, love, service, compassion, justice, equity, peace, and concern for the interdependent web of life out into the world. No effort is too small. Each expression of love and care for the world has ripple effects that flow out beyond you and that you are not in charge of. All you can do is keep sending out your small efforts with all the love you can muster for yourself, for humanity, and for this beautiful blue-green orb we inhabit. This service is about recognizing each of our efforts in the world as a way to encourage us to keep on keeping on. So let's hear from as many of you as we can. I want you to think about the ways that you live our shared values in the world. Is it through your work? Is it through your volunteer efforts? Is it in the ways that you care for your children? Is it in the ways you spend your money or the way that you vote or participate in our democracy? Maybe it's in the choices you make, in the media you consume, what you read, you watch, you listen to. Maybe it's in the way you treat others. Think about all of those ways. And we're going to try another Mentimeter. I know that the last time we tried this, it didn't quite work the way that we hoped, but we think we've figured it out. We've come up with some of those broad categories that Joe alluded to earlier, areas of concern that our congregation is engaged in. And we'd like you to think about where you put your time and your energy and resources beyond the walls of UCE or the confines of this community. You're invited to go to menti.com, M as in Mary, E-N as in Nancy, TI.com, and enter in the code 67106689. You'll see several choices come up, areas of concern, and you can choose multiple categories to show what areas you spend some of your time and resources on. In which of these categories do you feel you live out your UU values most? And if there are areas of focus that you don't see here and would like to add them to the chat, please do that. We've got immigrant and refugee rights, we've got anti-oppression, and that includes oppression when it comes to racism, gender, ability, anything that, anywhere where people are marginalized. How are we working to erase that? Environment, environmental concerns, education, prison reform and abolition, economic equity, healthcare, and voting and democracy. Enter in the ways that you are living your values. And keep adding those. I close with a plug. You can keep that screen up, Adam. I close with a plug for one-on-one conversations, which you can learn more about after the service and kinship time. One-on-ones are a spiritual practice and an organizational tool that can help us understand our values in this community and help us work together to live those more with greater strength and courage. By having these intentional conversations, we learn how to better support one another in living our common shared values. So let us continue to work together with acceptance of one another, encouragement to growth, and a deepening commitment to live out our shared values in the world beyond these walls. And as we seek to live out our values, building the world we dream about, let us be gentle and appreciative of ourselves.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join in saying these words. Though the flame is extinguished, we carry with us the warmth of community, the light of truth, and the fire of commitment until we are together again. Our closing hymn is number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do.
says do. Spirit 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 says do. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you've got to sing, oh Lord. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you've got to dance, oh Lord. You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you've got to shout, oh Lord. You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 Shout. Spirit says shout.
Right. Woo! That was beautiful, Jen. Thank you. I just wanted to say before our benediction that is a Negro spiritual, and as we mentioned last week, we are beginning an effort to recognize and pay royalties for hymns created by Africans who were enslaved in this country who were never given credit or payment. And we hope to add an opportunity to donate to this cause on our website to pay into the Evanston Reparations Community Fund for the Negro spirituals we use. With joy. Go with lifted hearts, buoyed by the knowledge that we are stronger and more vibrant together. Remember that you are not alone and that your small efforts added to mine and to theirs will bring us closer to the promise of the creating, sustaining, and transforming power of love. Go making peace.